said
the
what he
Damore
said.
story, the Damore story is really interesting, because I think it's such a classic story of an engineer getting tangled up in politics. So Damore went to this diversity seminar, and he wasn't very happy about it because he knew the literature. And so at the end of the seminar, they asked for feedback. Well, James Damore is an engineer. So when you tell an engineer that you want feedback, the engineer thinks, oh, you want feedback, and you want like facts and stuff, right? Because that's what feedback would be like. So Damore went and wrote this like thorough memo and gave it to them. He said, well, this is what I think. Here's some feedback. And then it traveled around. He got no real response from the diversity people. And then he posted it on one of these internal boards at Google where people can discuss things, which people at Google do all the time. So it was perfectly reasonable for him to post it because he didn't get a response from the diversity people. He thought, well, let's see what other people think. And then it was there for a long time until it was leaked into the outside world. It wasn't like Damore was trying to expose Google for what it is. He was just doing what an engineer type would do when someone asked him to provide feedback, because he's not thinking politically. He's not thinking, oh, they just want to hear what they already said. He thought they actually wanted some facts. Anyways, I think they picked on the wrong guy, because Damore turns out to be pretty damn tough.
Well, he's very smart and a very kind guy. Yeah. When you sit down and talk to him, he's not a sexist. He's a guy that's talking about facts. In fact, he wrote more than a page and a half, I believe, on strategies for getting more women interested in tech. He's not a sexist. Yeah. This is just a guy that was talking about the differences and the choices that people make that's based on just the variations that you were just discussing.
Yeah, well, there's a good study done a while ago, and unfortunately I don't remember the author, but they were looking at junior high math prodigies. And they're pretty equally distributed between boys and girls. But by the time university came along, the math prodigy boys, they tend to go into the STEM fields, but the girls wouldn't. And it isn't because they lacked ability, because they had stellar ability. It's because they weren't interested. And it turns out, like the interest thing turns out to be a big one. So with personality alone, if you measure men and women's personalities, and then you add up all the differences in personalities, you could tell with about 75 to 80% certainty by looking at a full personality readout whether a person's male or female. So you'd be wrong 25% of the time, something like that. But if you add interest to that, you can get it up to about 90%. And so, you say, well, are these differences large? Well, individually, they're not that big. They make more difference at the extremes. But if you add them up, then you can almost completely differentiate men from women. So by that token, they're very large. And the interest thing actually turns out to matter a lot. Like, it's probably the most important individual difference that has been discovered between men and women at the psychological level. And has real decent explanatory power, because you might say, well, men have a slight edge in spatial intelligence, and that's why they're overrepresented in STEM fields. And women have a slight edge in verbal intelligence. This is debatable, but literature kind of indicates that. And that's why they're overwhelmingly the majority of fiction readers, for example. Is that the reason that there's differential representation in the STEM fields? It's like, no, it doesn't seem to be. It doesn't look like it's an intellectual issue, which is also what Damore pointed out, by the way. He never said once that this was a cognitive issue. But it's a matter of choice, matter of interest. And women tend to be more people-oriented. Now, the thing is, this has also been discovered in chimpanzees and other primates. Like, if you offer baby or child chimpanzees, juvenile chimpanzees, the choice between thing-like toys, like cars, or people-like toys, like dolls, the males will go for the thing-like toys and the females will go for the people-like toys. So you see that in primates. And you think, well, is that surprising? It's like, well, no, it's not. It's not that surprising, really. I mean, women have to take care of infants, tiny infants, and you have to be really people-oriented to do that, because a tiny infant is an unbelievably demanding social relationship, and it's a primary relationship for about 2 years, and so women are tilted towards the kind of temperament that makes that possible. It's like, well, is that such a shock? Really? That's such a surprise? So,
no,
yeah.
It's not a surprise.